it's blank, there's no audio or anything.
Okay. Oop, there we are.
There we are, yeah, we're good.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
now you can go ahead. Sorry about that.
All right, that's okay. So I am the manager of capital planning at the County of Oxford. So we help with your asset management planning services. Jordan works every day, or at least once a week, out of the township office here with staff on bringing the plan forward and putting it together. So what we wanted to do today was sort of get together and go through what our regulatory requirements are, talk a little bit about how this plan sort of differs from the plans that have been brought forward in previous periods to you. And then we want to really focus on some of the financial analysis that we did in selecting our levels of service. Then we'll sort of summarize everything at the end and then go through our next steps. Okay. We've done this pretty...
Sorry, do you want questions as we're going, or do you just want them at the end?
Yeah, we've done it pretty informally with everyone else, so I'll pause throughout, but feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions or want to go into more detail, and I'll try and take notes if there's any takeaways as well.
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
All right, so what are our regulatory requirements? So through the regulation 588-17, we are required to have our asset management plan with our proposed levels of service published by July 1st, 2025. So that is what we are working towards here. As far as a risk, if something comes up as you're reviewing that's like you want changes, there's limited to no risk of any penalties or any issues if that date is not met, or the date is missed, sorry. We do know other municipalities that haven't even published their 2024 required AMP or even their 2022 AMPs and are still receiving all their funding. So there's very low risk if something comes up and we don't get it adopted by council by that July 1st deadline. So what is different with this asset management plan compared to others? The other plans looked at sort of where we are today, and this plan really wants us to focus on where do we want to be in the future, looking at what our ideal and sustainable levels of service are and how do we get there. So as part of our analysis, we have to look at various options, risks associated with those options, why the proposed service level is being recommended, why it is right for the municipality. We have to look at performance over that 10-year period. So not just where are we today, where do we think we're going to be in each of the next 10 years as we work towards that goal, the life cycle strategies that get us to that goal, and our financial strategy that gets us there. And then every year after we publish the 2025 plan, we're required to come back with an annual update on sort of a how are we doing? What has come up in the past year that's maybe prevented us from progressing the way we thought we were going to? I think tariffs is a really good example of that right now. We don't know those impacts, so what we're presenting to you today obviously doesn't have any tariff-related impacts on that, but it could have a big impact. So any new information we get over the course of the year will feed into that annual update process that we bring forward. And we always plan to have that before you start budgets, so that when we start looking at capital projects through the budget process, we've always got the most up-to-date information that we're bringing forward. Just an overview of the scenarios that we reviewed. So for each sort of service area or asset area, we looked at 4 different scenarios. So what are our 2025 budgeted contributions to our reserves or grant funding that we receive? So where are we today essentially? What is our fully funded scenario? And in this context, what we mean by fully funded is the life cycle strategies that we are aware of today, that we say we are using to maintain our assets. How much do we need to set aside on an annual basis to have enough to do all those strategies? So that's sort of what we're looking at from a fully funded standpoint. And then we would pick 2 additional options of scenarios, either based on a specified funding level or a specific condition level. So some of our core assets, we have a very technical and very specific metric that we can use from a condition standpoint, where some assets are a lot more subjective, and therefore it's a lot more difficult to do that analysis based on a condition. So we tend to do it more on a funding level. So as part of that analysis, we look at a 100-year period so that we can capture assets with long useful lives. Fleet is really short, 7-10 years, whereas we get some of our underground assets from a stormwater standpoint, they can be up to 90 years. Same with some of your culverts and things like that are PVC or steel, 50 plus years. So we want to make sure we're capturing the life cycles throughout those iterations. The software tool that we use recommends life cycle projects based on a prioritization strategy. So it goes through certain logic, but there are limitations within the system. So staff at the county are consistently working with that software provider for enhancements that we'd like to see out of that system. All right, so we're going to go through the scenarios reviewed within each of the appendix areas that we have included in the asset management plan here. So for the general government area, which is sort of building and drainage service assets, facilities assets, and our cemeteries assets, we did exclude from a funding standpoint the building and drainage service assets because they are funded by dedicated reserves through the Drainage Act and building permit fees. So those assets are not included in this. So our 4 scenarios, budgeted contributions, which resulted in about 87% funded, fully funded, 70% funded, and 80% funded. We do have a fairly healthy reserve right now that is used for general government. So that's why we see that regardless of the scenario that we looked at, over the next 20 years, the average condition is pretty much the same. Okay. Under each of the scenarios, though, what happens is the administrative building replacement of the full building is being deferred because it says we haven't built up enough funding for that come that point in time. So with the fully funded, we initially run that scenario assuming unlimited resources. So we have all the money available to us, all the manpower available to us, and that's generally not realistic, right? We can't do big swings up and down. Your residents can't handle those kind of significant changes in their property taxes, and in some cases, the manpower, the construction staff that are required to do some of that work just can't handle that volume of work when you have those big peaks and valleys as well. So then we use that to determine how much how much we need to put aside every year. And then we rerun the scenario based on that funding limitation. And that gives us sort of that more realistic expectation of what is manageable and what is sustainable over that period. So that's sort of how that fully funded target comes up. Now you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, sort of, if you do have your asset management plan document open, I've included the page number there, so if you wanted to reference that. So the top number there is sort of the appendix page numbering, and then the bottom one is the overall page number in the AMP document itself. Okay. So for general government, this chart shows sort of a summary of the various scenarios that we looked at. So scenario B in all cases is the fully funded scenario. And what's that saying? So our average condition, our average risk, and our percentage of assets in poor critical condition, that is sort of the ideal best case scenario in a sustainable manner of where we would be if we were fully funded. It looks like, in this particular case especially, a large number of assets in poor critical condition, and that has a lot to do with the life cycle strategies. A lot of assets don't have rehabilitation strategies that make sense or that are cost efficient. So we are running those assets based on a run to failure or run to end of useful life strategy. So as we do that, we will see those assets continue to decline, and where you have a portfolio that is largely dependent on those types of scenarios, you will see a higher percentage of assets in poor critical condition. That doesn't mean you're not able to provide the services that you're expected of them. It just means that is the best way to manage those types of assets. Okay. So the recommendation for general government was to stay at the same funding level, which is the scenario A there. resulting in poor average overall condition that was consistent across the board regardless of the funding level that we looked at, and had very moderate changes in the risk level there. With the deferral of the admin building or potential deferral of it, it can be managed through debenture funding as we get closer to that timeline. In the event of an unexpected closure, like we saw through COVID, everybody has the ability to work from home, or most individuals have the ability to work from home. So we can use that as a risk mitigation strategy for this type of service, recognizing that there are a lot of service areas that we can't mitigate in that manner and that would have a higher risk. So are there any questions so far?
Questions? Nope, not seeing any. Thank you.
So then we look at sort of the financials, and this is probably the easiest one we'll look at. We've recommended to stay where we are today, so the only thing that's built into this chart is an estimated inflationary increase year over year that we want to contribute to that reserve. So we're saying our replacement costs are anticipated to increase every year by inflation, therefore we should at least be increasing our contribution by inflation as well. So then looking at protection services, very similar with the scenarios, all based on a percentage of the funding level, including our current reserve balance. And in all cases, except for that fully funded, the replacement of the fire halls is being deferred. Again, very similarly, we can mitigate that through the use of debenture funding if there's any risk of that deferral posing an issue. So our current annual investment here is $292,000. Staff, and this is in discussions, Jordan had a lot of discussions with township staff on which service level to select that we felt was sustainable and had the right sort of balance of risk and funding. Have selected scenario D, which is to target 70% funded, or $476,000 annually. Yep.
So in any of these scenarios, you're starting with the current baseline asset mix, which may or may not be the appropriate mix. Is that fair?
So as far as whether or not we have the right assets, we didn't really necessarily look at that. Yeah, I'm not sure how Blandford-Blenheim looks at that from an annual budget process. They're always looking at right sizing. I assume, the county does that as part of its standard practice. I assume that that's probably done here as well. So we're always looking at right sizing everything and making sure that we have the right assets to deliver the services.
And Josh, I'm asking that question because of not having the fire plan and protective services master plan. There's no gap analysis between what we have now and what is required.
Right.
So we're starting in this analysis with what we have now.
Right.
So we might find in our planning that there's either additional incremental or there's some that we can sell on.
Right.
So there's a little bit of I don't want to overcomplicate it, but
Yep.
in my mind, there's another level to this.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that was exactly what you just described, was a common theme in our discussions with Jordan as we sort of reviewed the work that he had done. I think it was consistently communicated that this is a living document. It's something that we're able to go and kind of make those changes. And again, we kind of did the best we had with the information that was available, but I do expect that there will be some changes as we continue to focus on sort of our levels of service across different departments and do those more in-depth reviews in the years to come.
So and to that end as well, if we've identified through the development charges background study that we have any new growth assets that we need to come on, those we have incorporated in here. So while we don't have the initial cost incorporated into the asset management plan, all of their life cycle activities and their plan replacement, whether it be 10, 15, 20, 100 years down the road, is incorporated into the figures that we are providing today. And we'll see that sort of, once I get to the next slide, I can sort of show you how that looks. Yep. Okay. All right, so for the financial then recommendations, we've got the inflationary increases very similarly here. And if we look at 2027 in the chart, we see that gray bar sort of bumps up much quicker than any of the other years. And that is because we have a growth asset that's anticipated to come online in 2027. And when that asset comes online, we say now we have to put more money aside every year than what we had to previously, because that is now part of our assets. So we have to start planning for that sort of initially if we want to set ourselves up in a sustainable way for when those life cycle needs and replacements come online. So as part of protection services, we're looking to reallocate, or proposing that we reallocate $64,000 from the working capital reserve, along with an increase of approximately $12,000 in the levy for increasing the contributions in the reserve to help sort of close that gap. And we can see that based on this strategy and that sort of approximate $12,000 continuing, we would get to the point where we're ideally funded by the end of the 10-year period for this service area. So Public Works has a number of different types of asset categories. So we've actually looked at each of them individually. So we'll go through a few different areas for Public Works, and then we bring it all together at the end to look at the financial strategy. Now we are excluding from this analysis rural storm and a lot of the gravel roads, as a lot of those costs are currently funded through the operating budget, so they're currently addressed there. So for bridges and structural culverts, generally speaking, we are able to target a very specific condition. We did have some challenges with previous bridge condition ratings from the consultant that didn't initially align with the MTO standards. So there is a new bridge needs study being done in 2025. We are working with that, we'll be working with that consultant to ensure that the ratings that come back are in line with those MTO standards so that we can do our comparisons and our benchmarks across municipalities, since it's a very defined metric. We have done, I know Jordan's done some adjustments here to sort of attempt to align what we're presenting here with what our expectations would be coming out of that. But that is a bit of a limitation here, and that's why we've done that for this particular iteration of the asset management plan based on a percentage of funding, whereas next time, once we have those updated bridge need study conditions, we would switch over to sort of doing a targeted condition rating on those structures. Bridges and culverts do have or tend to have a multi-year design and construct process. So regardless of the scenario, we look at condition tends to be the same and projects tend to be the same over the short term, just based on the nature of the work that has to be done on those. And we also see a projected bottleneck in approximately 40 years. So there's a significant number of structures that would be due for life cycle activities at that point in time that financially, resource-wise, staffing-wise, just is not sustainable. So usually when that occurs, we do see a reduction in the overall condition of the network at that point in time, while we sort of slowly work through the ability to complete all those activities, and then the condition rating comes back to sort of that average level that we project over the period for those assets.
We'll let you young'uns look after the 40 years from now.
Then the recommendation from the scenarios that were reviewed was to target 60% funded, which is approximately $1.9 million. Now that is not just the levy contribution, that also includes a share of the CCBF and OSIF grant funding. We include that funding because those are pretty set, consistent, guaranteed to come in year over year. So they're dependable, and we can count on them to include them across this. The 60% funding is still considerably lower than our fully funded scenario. So the condition rating overall is still at a critical level, and the percentage of assets in poor or critical condition is still quite a bit higher than at that fully funded level. So then looking at the roadway assets, this is another area that we are able to target a specific condition from a funding standpoint. So we look at the pavement condition index and what we want to target there. So based on our 2025 budgeted contributions, and again, that includes a share of the OSIF and CCBF grant money, we're at about a 40 PCI if we were to maintain that funding level, which is a pretty low condition, are fully funded. So this is the most realistic expectation if we were doing all the life cycle strategies that we could, recognizing that the only way to get that higher would be to have unlimited resources, is a 73 PCI. And then what would the financial requirements be to target a 60 PCI overall or a 64 PCI overall? For these particular assets, we did only look at a 50-year period. We did not look at a 100-year period. One of the improvement areas that we are still working on from across the board with all the county and all the area municipalities is looking at the rural roads and the need for a complete replacement on the rural roads. And that includes granulars as well as the asphalt hardtop. Because there is no underground infrastructure on those rural roads, it's not necessarily required to replace that granular base when you come to that sort of supposed end of life. So what we are trying to do is determine which roads would require a granular base replacement, and that could be due to increased traffic volumes, like increased trucking traffic, could be a result of stormwater issues, and leaving those in the system, but then getting those where we don't need to do that into a different profile that shows that we can do a lot more surface replacements on those before we even have to touch those granulars. So if we didn't shorten our period to 50 years, we'd bring in all those replacements, and that would really inflate our annual requirements on here. We didn't feel that was appropriate to present at this point. So using that shorter period actually removes most of that. So the recommendation from staff was to target a 60 PCI overall, and that results in an average annual contribution of about $1.6 million and an overall average condition on the network of fare, recognizing that that is the average, and you will have some roads in really good condition. You will have some roads that are in poor condition and maybe not be the most smooth roads to drive on, but we do anticipate needing to have those roads go to that condition before we trigger those life cycle strategies and that complete replacement so that it's most cost effective. So then looking at fleet and equipment, these scenarios were based on a percentage of fully funded. We did go back to the 100 years for this bucket, and the fleet and equipment generally has a lot shorter asset useful lives, so requiring replacement more frequently, and generally speaking, a lot of them don't have rehabilitation strategies that you can do. You run them on a run to failure, run to planned end of useful life strategy. So our current funding is $193,000, and the recommended target is to be 80% funded, which would bring the required investment up to about $430,000 a year. And then we look at all the other assets sort of together. So this would include sidewalks, street lights, pedestrian crossings, if you have any, guide rails, those types of assets. And again, this one is based on a percentage of funded. And in all cases, except that fully funded scenario, we are deferring the replacement of the public works yard, and we're talking complete replacement at that point. We do have certain components that we would replace up to that point, like roof, potentially windows, potentially some HVAC, that would still happen, but as the actual structure nears end of life, we would not have enough funding built up in that reserve to do that replacement. So the current funding level is $116,000, and the recommendation is to move to $161,000. Still leaves it in an average condition, very similar, since it's only targeting the 50% funded. One of the
Public
improvement.
Works is going to be an interesting budget this year with all the increases.
So one of the improvement areas that we are looking at from a building standpoint that sort of supports why the 50% was selected here is that there are some additional rehabilitation strategies that we know are available out there that we haven't incorporated yet. We just haven't had, the resources to go in and look those up and find out if they're beneficial for us to bring in. We don't necessarily have our buildings broken down at the right level of components, so we want to get a little bit more granular, a little bit more detailed to sort of help us project out what life cycle needs are required on those structures. So once we get that work completed, we do think that sort of fully funded scenario B might come down naturally. So that 161,000 that right now is only looking at 50% might actually be higher. So that's sort of why we've come up with that 50% for those types of assets right now.
Just a point, I remember in some of the preliminary discussions that we had with Jordan, there was some discussion around sort of a phase-in period and how we work our way towards, towards those funding goals. Are you willing to maybe provide a little bit of discussion on sort of what the phase-in looks like or what some of the strategies you're seeing municipalities have used are?
So I think we'll get into some of that once we get into the summary. So we sort of put together a slide that sort of looks at where we are today and summarizes that and what does that mean from a levy standpoint. So we'll get down to that and can have some.
Not next year's budget impact, it is phased in, I guess is where I was going with that,
Yeah, we'll get there. So from a public works standpoint, we include estimated inflationary increases. Again, we're still banking on our CCBF and OSIF contributions to continue. And then we're reinvesting retired debt obligations into reserves. So if we've debentured something in the past and, that interest that we pay every year comes down as we make those payments, we're taking that money because it was already a charge to the levy and then putting it into that capital reserve, and that helps us naturally close that gap. Because those dollars already exist, they're just used for a different purpose. So they were initially put on the levy for capital purposes, so we're leaving them capital and just putting them in the reserve so that we have them available to us later. 2026 is also proposing a reallocation of $681,000 from the working capital reserve, and then an increase on the levy of $117,000, which actually works out to about 1.5% of your 2025 levy. So Public Works is the most significant overall impact on your levy. And as you can see from that chart, even at the end of the 10-year, based on our proposal, we'd still not even get to that overall ideally funded level that we need to be at, having looked at each of those individual areas. So we're slowly continuing to work our way up there in a manner that is sustainable, or that we hope is sustainable to the residents.
When we're talking about the retired debt obligations, are you just talking about the principal part of the debt obligation? The interest portion is typically in working capital. But we're talking about the retired debt obligations. going back into the capital reserve for this asset? Is it just the principal portion, or the principal, because the interest portion would probably go into the general reserve?
What we're suggesting is that, so we pay the same principal every year.
Yeah.
So the interest actually decreases every year as the principal is paid off.
Yeah.
So just that small amount of interest that we're not paying this year, we're just suggesting that we put that interest that we're not paying into the reserve.
Okay.
So for instance, this is Public Works, which is the only one we have a debenture on right
Yeah.
now, so it's debenture part of Princeton. So as we're paying that off, and we're paying a little bit less interest each year, we're just gonna put that interest into the reserve rather than increasing the levy by that amount. Since we've already sort of added that to the levy, we're just gonna put it into the reserve to help fund the capital.
Gotcha. Okay. That was a question. I wondered where it went. Yeah.
So then the next area that we have is community services. This one was done on percentage of funded. In all cases except that fully funded, we're looking at deferring the replacement of the arena and the community center. So very similarly, we can use debenture funding here, cautioning that it does increase your levy for the interest amount on it. But there's very different sort of mitigation available here. It's not like it's a work from home scenario. If you have an arena, everybody just can't go play hockey at home. They could be sent to a different municipality, but there's obviously cost implications with things like that, and ice time availability and things like that as well, right? So very challenging when it comes to an end-of-life replacement for those types of facilities. The recommendation in this case is a 40% funded, and that has a lot to do with fundraising and other one-time grant opportunities that may arise. We don't account for those in this type of analysis since they aren't guaranteed. However, they've been successful at receiving grant money for it, been successful at fundraising opportunities. So those types of funding sources would be used when we get closer to that retirement and help in planning for that eventual life cycle need and that replacement of that asset. So it doesn't look like a lot here, but it's supplemented by that other funding that comes in. So that's why that one was selected at the 40% as well. So then from a financial standpoint, we do see in 2033 that we have a bit of an increased contribution for a growth asset that's anticipated to come online, and that was largely the timing and the development charges background study. So we do review that as we go every year and say, is that timing still accurate? And is it sooner? Is it later? And we'll adjust accordingly as well. And then from a proposed investment change, we're reallocating the $54,000 from the working capital reserve and an additional 2026 increase in the levy of about $10,000. So the reason that we are looking at reallocating from working capital is it's easier for us to do the modeling and the life cycle costing if we're setting aside funds for a very specific purpose. The working capital reserve would target different life cycle needs that arose, and it was never guaranteed funding towards, say, community services or roads. So this is suggesting, and it would be approved through the 2026 budget process, that we move away from that and have that targeted funding specifically to sort of those areas. So where do we look like we are at the end? The replacement value of all of our assets is approximately $367 million. If we were to fully fund everything, we would be at about $7.7 million that we would need to annually contribute to reserves. The targets that were selected across all of the areas put us at about 4.9, and currently we're setting aside about 2.7. So that leaves us with about a $2.2 million annual deficit, which is quite significant on a smaller municipality, right? So then getting into sort of, this is the next sort of slide here is 2025 looks at where are we today? So what is our proposal for 2026 and sort of how are we going to get there? So the 2026, and I'll jump to the bottom, the percentage of levy increase, that 12.9% is 10.6% reallocation from your working capital and a 2.3% levy increase. So that's what it's looking at. And then 2027, that is based on 2025, so it's not necessarily 2.8, 2.93, 3.1. That's based on just your 2025's levy, so it sort of probably is more like that, 2.3% across the board is what the projected increase would be each year. And keeping in mind that these are just the recommendations here, we try and bring forward what we feel may be sustainable from a capital, but we are very focused on just looking at the capital aspect here, and that it would be through the 2026 budget that you would actually approve the number. So adoption of your asset management plan does not automatically mean you're increasing your levy by 2 or 3% and you're going into your budget deliberations knowing that you're starting at 2.3%, right? You'll have the opportunity through those budget deliberations to then look at all of your priorities across the municipality and say, yes, we think we can afford the 2.3% here, or no, we can't. And then make that decision to what that number would be, and then we would come back and adjust projects or expectations accordingly. And that would essentially reduce your overall sort of condition of your, that average that we're expecting, what we're projecting that we see over the next 10-year period, and take a little longer to get to that ideally funded scenario.
Problem is, if you don't stay to that, or try to stay as close as you can to that 2.3%, you're just pay me now, pay me later, right? It just keeps adding and adding. Every year it'll be a little bit more if you try to get there in that period of time.
And recognizing that is made up of both your inflation, which
Yeah.
that we can't get away from really, and then that proposed investment change. And that proposed investment change is really what we want to try and get to as close to zero as we possibly can, recognizing that, you know, every time we have a growth asset, we need to increase it by more than just inflation to account for that purpose, right? So that's your ideal scenario is inflation plus an increase for any new assets that you bring online.
Go ahead.
Denise, we're, I think for the last 4 years, 5 years, we've been in the habit of, we sort of did this
Since our last
analysis.
plan, which was
Yeah.
2021, so the recommendation from that one was an increase of 1.8%.
1.8,
I've been doing
okay.
Plus the inflation. So last year, actually, overall, it was an increase of 2.6%.
Okay, I thought we were close to that, okay.
Yep.
Good. So we're already kind of
There now.
in that rigor.
Yeah.
Yeah, of that, so that's good.
Yep.
That's quite scary. 2.2 million.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm first going through all the numbers, and I thought you were saying that we had to get it to there, like, that was part of it right now, and I'm like, how are we ever going to get that right now?
and survive it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions where we're at right now? Okay, go ahead.
So I just have one more slide. So what are our next steps? The anticipated approval of the asset management plan is the June 18th council meeting. And then staff will go back and look at all the improvement areas that we've identified throughout the asset management plan and sort of prioritize them. Which ones will have the biggest impact on sort of the recommendations that we've brought forward and that may potentially change them when we do that. So I'm trying to target those first, and then some of the other nice to haves that won't have that substantial impact on the document overall, doing that later. And then we'll incorporate all of the changes that were proposed through the asset management plan into the initial budget package that you guys would receive later on.
Go ahead.
So you might be planning on covering this, but you're talking about growth assets, you're talking about like net new assets sort of outside the existing plan?
Yes, so like a brand new park, a brand new water park that you bring on. If you decide your public works building's not big enough and you need a new bay to handle new equipment, then that new bay would be another, what we would consider a growth asset that we would.
So I'm thinking a little bit smaller than that. We oftentimes, during the course of the year, get requests from staff for a piece of equipment that's something I haven't had before. I'm trying to think, you remember that piece of lawn care equipment that they were able to?
The roller?
Was that what it was?
You're thinking of the roadside
Yeah.
grass cutting
That's what I
piece,
was thinking,
Oh,
the
yeah,
roadside,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, in that situation, should we always be funding those out of the levy then? Because, Denise is saying yes.
Yes, so ideally, right,
Channeling, yeah.
our recommendations here are to build reserves for your existing assets, right? And we've seen here, we have an extremely large gap currently and funding challenges and projects being deferred. So if you're pulling from those reserves for brand-new assets that we're then going to have to start, you're actually digging your hole a little bit further, right? Taking money away from what you need for your existing assets that then has to be made up later on. So you could then be needing, instead of 1.8 or 2.3, you're 1.9 or 2.4% on the levy in order to make up for that.
Yeah, you have to make it up, plus you have to sustain it,
Yes.
right? So it's not just a one-year thing, you have to sustain the replacement of it in the future, so.
I think some of those projects we've done was, something else come under budget, so we used it, if, say we're, 50,000 under budget on something else, that part that was maybe on next year's budget proposal was brought forward. That's what we've kind of done. So we used that $50,000, say, that we saved, we used it for that project. So it hasn't been, that's what we've kind of done
Yeah,
most of the
I'm talking
time.
more about things that we kind of do mid-year.
Yeah.
We get, requests for things that are,
Yeah.
that haven't been budgeted for, and they're net new assets, as opposed to, those are the kind of things that in the following budget, we have to think about, because we have to replenish. If we took it from reserves, it has to be replenished, plus, it's almost double.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if we've done a whole lot of ones that have been extra. Most of them have been from.
You're thinking of the Raber,
Yeah, just trying to think, like, most of them we've done from where something was under budget, we used that savings to bring it forward at that time. I don't know if we've done a lot. I know we've done some, but
the
if we
point
do,
is- The point is that, when we're doing, or looking at those items that are coming
Yep.
to council mid-season, we have to remember that, how we're gonna fund it. Because we can't
Yeah.
just automatically assume that it's gonna come out of reserves.
Yeah.
And, all it's gonna be, everything will sort of take care of itself, because you're adding that asset.
Yeah.
to the plan, right?
it's funding that asset part of it is what you mean. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anything else from council? Nope. Is that the end?
That is the end of
Yeah.
the presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I think it was great. It was kind of piggybacked on the asset one we had at county last as well. So it's the nice part about this is that this will really give council and staff an idea of what we are going to have to do at budget time from now and future years going forward with those assets. Like I say, it's nice to always get all those things, but somewhere down the road, you have to pay to replace them as you go on, right? So,
It's discipline,
yeah.
right, in budgeting? for
Yeah,
capital.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, nothing else? All right. Yep.
Be it hereby resolved that council received a presentation from Jennifer Lavallee, Manager of Capital Planning with Oxford County regarding the 2025 Asset Management Plan as information.
Okay, can I get a mover and second, please? Moved by Councillor Demers, second by Councillor Banbury. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Yeah.
It was really well done.
Yeah, very well. Do you want to go to some of the staff? No. Yeah. So do you want to go to, where are we here? We could. What would council like to do? Do you want to continue on? We can't do our committee of adjustment until 4 o'clock, but do you want to do keep going, or take a break? Keep moving? All right. Okay. We'll give Jennifer a second to, no rush. You want it to 4. Okay, we'll do our, we'll go to correspondence and general.
Be it hereby resolved that the general correspondence be received as information.
Okay, mover and second, please. By Councillor Banbury, second by Councillor Barnes. Any comments on that at all? That's the Ron Stewart. Oh, sorry, that's one where we have to pick. We have to pick 2 people to go, right? This one here? Yes, yes, sorry. My apologies, that was me that rushed that one through. Where are we here? Yeah, so we need 2 to go. I thought I would go to that. It's June 19th, right? I believe. That's the date. Does that sound right?
Yep.
I'm okay
3
to.
to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Elmhurst and Ingersoll.
Yeah, 3 to. Okay, so we need one more, if anybody else?
Is it Thursday?
Yeah.
I said I wasn't able to.
Okay, anybody else? Darrell or Bruce? Because Nancy is already there, so she doesn't count as one of the 2. So, or either one of you 2, it's,
Is it the 19th?
okay. Bruce? If we can't get to, it's not the end of the world, but,
Yeah, I guess I could, as far as
okay.
I know.
So we'll have Bruce and myself go. Yeah.
You're gonna go? Will you go?
No.
Is it the 19th?
Oh, you're
Yeah,
busy,
so
okay.
they're both busy, so it's just you and I.
I'll do my best.
Okay.
You got the short straw.
Do we have to put that in here at all, or no?
I always
No.
take short straw.
Yeah.
No, yeah, just the 3 of you, Mr. Mayor, so they just asked that we RSVP to confirm, so the Director of Corporate Services and I will take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. All right, all in favor? And opposed, if any, and that's carried. Okay, and we might as well go on to Trevor. We might as well do your Director of Community Services. You have 3 reports today. Yeah. Welcome, Trevor.
Right, just got a few reports to do today. This is a follow-up report for the partnership agreement with the Drumbo Agriculture Society. There was some feedback from the last council meeting on May 7th that council requested, and we've looked into some other things as well from the insurance company, in-house staff doing the snow removal and the grass cutting. From our insurance point of view, we are able to do the snow, we are able to do the grass in-house, as long as there's a clear-cut agreement with them. That being said, from an in-house point of view, we can't maintain the snow at their level that they need. So we can do the grass, no problem. Like I said, the insurance company has laid out what we need to do in there, in the agreement. We can also do the, they've asked for the $1,000. There are 3 requests for the $1,000, the grass and the snow. So we know from the insurance point of view, we can do that, but we cannot do the in-house snow removal for the time they'd like it done. And then the council also requested the cost of what it would cost to rent the facility if we were just to do it without a partnership agreement. It would be about $11,000 for 48 weeks. It's $225 a day. And then there's a deposit of $225 for the season, the damage deposit that we'd have to pay. And we'd get that back at the end of the year, but if we continued on, we'd have to keep that, they'd keep that $225. That $225 damage deposit is per time, but they said they would do it per the season, or per the whole 48 times. So staff are just looking for direction from council. If they'd like us to go back with a new negotiation, we can come back and do a closed session at some point and do a new negotiation, send it back to them, or we go back to them with, we can't do the snow, but we can do the grass and the $1,000, or we just go back to them and say we can do the grass, or we defer this and say that we're not going to do anything at this point.
What's council's thoughts? Councilor Bamber.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, do we know who cuts the grass now?
Johnson's.
Oh,
And like I said, maybe they're locked into there was concern about them maybe locking into a contract for the season, so it might not happen this year, but we can surely go back to them next year and say, we're ready to go.
Can we handle that extra capacity though, of grass cutting? You guys
Yeah.
have a lot of grass to cut.
We cut the park and we cut the township office, so it's right in the middle. So it wouldn't be that much more really. And they're just requesting it once a week, kind of like we cut the same level of service that we provide for the park and the township office, so. Not the supporting fields, but the park itself, so.
Does Mountain View also do the snow removal, or?
Yes. That's what they informed me, like, I was just through conversation.
Well, they're a good local business, so.
Is there any concern about setting a precedence for, I'm just kind of concerned a little bit on that. Just out of curiosity, because I don't know how that services worked. How's the Princeton Museum? Do we cut their grass, or do they pay for it, or do we do?
The Princeton Museum, yes, there is a charge back to them around that building. The cost of that grass, Denise, do you remember? The cost of the Princeton Museum pays us to cut the grass.
Yeah, there is an agreement.
There's an agreement with them
Yeah.
that we charge them for the grass cutting, yes.
I'm just wondering if we do it here, are they going to come back and ask?
Right, I guess the rebuttal back to that would be, we're using their facility for this program. That's kind of the highlighted. And it's for the early on years program.
What's council's thought? Anybody else? Go ahead, Council.
I guess, if it's a service that we feel is needed for Drumbo, and if we're, able to get that service for $1,000 plus grass cutting, that seems like good value. Maybe that's too simplistic, but, yeah.
And it did come from early on years that they would like to run programming here,
Yeah.
like in Drumbo, like that. That isn't a staff recommendation, that came from the early on year program, so that they'd be interested in running that.
It must make sense.
I would think so. They basically said if any time you can get a facility in Drumbo, we would be entertaining it, and we'd like to start a program there. They are going to run in out of our parks for the summer, but again, they're going to start in July. They just sent us an email last week about that. But if it is raining or if it is weather dependent, they won't be doing the program in Drumbo. Right now, we do run one in Plattsville, or they do one run in Plattsville Hall and the Princeton Hall. So.
I think the program is definitely well worth running if we can do it, for sure. Go ahead, Councilman.
And Mr. Mayor, would it be possible to do a one-year trial to see how everything works out?
Yeah, that would be the kind of the idea, because we want early on to be there for 1 year. I think everybody's saying that 1 year trial period. And like I said, this might now that they might be locked into a grass contract for the season, so we might not be able to start this till next year if they still agree with what moving forward. But we just want to know, like to go back to them. They'd like to some information, and they were, yeah.
Do you think the snow removal would be a break for them, like they wouldn't do a deal? Handle the snow removal?
I think they asked for the world, and they're
Yeah.
gonna get what we can come back with. So
I think
I don't blame them
if it
for.
comes down to the snow removal, I'm 100% against it. If we can do this with what we're doing,
Yeah.
Grass cutting, we're already there anyway.
yeah, that's right. It's just a matter of finishing up, really.
They
So,
might
but
come back with requesting equivalent value to what they would have had with snow removal. So maybe it's like a $5,000 cash contribution, and then,
Yeah.
that's a different discussion,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. So they may come back and ask for more, because their expectation is
Yeah.
is for the value of that, right?
yeah.
Well, when you're talking snow removal, Mr. Mayor, are we talking about for use for this
So
organization, or are we moving the snow for every time.
For every
summertime
event,
approaches.
every event, not just the early on, it would be every event. Right now, they provide a monthly calendar.
Yeah, well,
to-
that's kind of a big ask, I think.
Yeah. Like if somebody all of a sudden called them on a Friday and said, is it open Saturday? And they go, yep, you can have it. Well, then we'd be, you know, it's the overtime and everything. Yeah, it's that definitely, for me, the snow removal is definitely, shouldn't be even in there for sure.
I know the museum pays the agricultural holder to cut their grass, so that may be something to look into as well. It's included in their price.
Okay. All right. Yes.
So I'm comfortable with option A.
Yeah.
for council.
Yep.
I think it's a service that would benefit our community, and
Yep.
if we can do that, it seems like a good option.
Yep. That's what I would say too, council, is option A. Does that sound good for council?
And just noting that it's on a one-year trial basis.
Yeah. Yep, go ahead.
Be it hereby resolved that report CS 2507 be received as information, and further, that council directs staff to proceed with the potential partnership agreement between Drumbo Agricultural Society and the municipality, as outlined in option A of report CS 2507 on a one-year trial basis.
Okay, can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Young, second by Councillor Demers. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Okay, and we might as well finish you off, Trevor, so you do your monthly report now.
Okay. Yep. Just doing the monthly report for the Community Services Department. Staff have been working in the office here, renovations on the old print room to make it into an office/break room. The arena, we've been beginning to do our annual maintenance, preparing the facility. This includes painting, getting things ready, fixing up some of the boards. Parks and Ball Diamonds have been busy. In May, we've hosted 2 tournaments, and all our regular groups have started already. So, had a few rain dates, obviously, because of that. But yeah, and we also have June 14th will be the grand opening of the Plattsville Park. This will be held at the Community Day at 12 o'clock. We will be sending out an invite to all council members. This will be with recognizing OTF, Ontario Trillium Fund, for that accessible playground that we have put in there. They are working on the Princeton playground still. We'll be sending a notice out to everybody when this is complete. And there'll be music in the park starting June 19th in the Plattsville Park, and there'll be music in the park starting June 19th in the Princeton Park. So there's some things going on this summer. Plattsville will also host a barbecue in the park on Thursday nights with music. And then June 14th is Community Day in Plattsville, and we will have the grand opening for the playground. And every councillor will be getting an invitation for that.
Anything on the monthly report? I just got one question with the splash pad and Drumbo, and I don't know whether, Nancy and I were over at our Lions meeting one night, and I don't know whether there was kids there because I didn't see them. Remember last year we had where the pad kept running, part of it, the water was going? Is that still going on, or, remember late in the year there was a valve or something that it was bypassing
Yep.
by?
They've been changed.
Okay.
But there's still one issue with it, and the pump needs to stay running, so one feature runs right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Yeah. It's a flow switch that needs to come in.
Okay.
We changed the part that they thought it was, and now there's still one more component that needs to be changed. So to keep it from losing its prime, it needs to keep, one feature needs to run, and it's just recycled. It's not new water coming in. So we're not wasting water. So that part has been ordered. So.
Okay. And we just happened to see
Yep.
it, and I wondered if I knew we had that issue last fall. So
Yes, we did we changed some parts in it that everybody thought was going to be the problem, but
Yeah.
it's also the flow switch.
Okay.
just a flow meter, it just isn't metering it enough. Works sometimes, doesn't work all the time, but if you leave that one unit on, the button will work all the time.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Be it hereby resolved that report CS 2508 be received as information.
Okay, can I move a second, please? Moved by Councillor Young, second by Councillor Banbury. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. And your last report.
Yes, this is just the electronic vehicle charging units report. Some background information about this report. There was an MTO grant that would cover 75% of the funding for EV charging stations throughout their township. Township and Jewel filled out the grant because Jewel was going to cover the 25% of the funding for these stations. We were awarded the grant with Jewel, so there'd be 100% coverage of the EV stations. Right now, staff are working to make sure that the agreement with Jewel for the stations is reviewed by the lawyers, learners, and the insurance company has given us feedback on how to move forward with it. There is an agreement in place that we have not signed yet. We're just giving you an update today that there's going to be 12 EV charger stations throughout the township, 3 in each community, in the 4 communities. They are 3 charging units with a big battery component, so the battery can get charged, and then throughout the day, you don't need to burden the electrical system grid. So the battery will charge at night, and then less burden on your hydro stations when it's, or on your hydro usage when the peak hours are on. So, but yeah, so we're working with Jewel right now to review the agreement, working with learners, and our insurance company has given us the feedback, and in-house staff are reviewing the agreement too to make sure that everything that we can do, and then once we get all that put together, we'll send it back to Jewel with the original agreement, and we will have another report to council about signing that agreement.
Any questions from council at all? Council member.
I'm not too well versed on charging stations, so who pays for the electricity? Do you have to pay so much each time you charge your vehicle, or how does that work?
Yes, so the person who owns a vehicle, who charges the vehicle, there'll be a spot for their debit card or credit card where they can pay for the,
The gas station,
just like a gas station, yes.
except it takes a little longer to charge your battery than it does to charge your...
Yes, these are quick chargers, they call them.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be a quick charge. There are some in our township now at Master Stakes. There's a unit there. So reached out to them. They use a third party as well. And the rate that you pay is set by the third party.
Now some of the Tesla ones, I know, when they plug their vehicle, it's the number, like it's automatically billed to those people, like they don't have to, I think anyway, they don't have to use that's why I wondered if it was an automatic, this is my vehicle and it automatically goes to that owner. But I don't know.
Not sure if the AI systems in those cars are.
Yeah, some of them, it's an automatic billing thing. I don't know. I don't have a vehicle. Just anything else from council? Go ahead.
We decide someday to go to electric lawnmowers and stuff like that. Will we be able to plug into these as well, if necessary?
I don't know. I don't know. I would think.
In our parks, not,
Right.
have to plug into something. Plug it in.
Yeah. No, I don't know what the lawnmowers have compared to what the cars have for ports. But
Just a question.
yeah, and most of the stuff. The reason why the MTO put these grants out there and stuff was because more for rural communities, not for the people that live in them because they have chargers usually in their garage, but the people that visit them. So for tourism, and we will promote these through tourism. We'll talk to Oxford Tourism too to put them on a map saying that they're around here.
So I just had when you're saying that, I had a little concern about maybe some of the locations of them. And I remember when this was first presented to us, it was, to bring people to our downtown core, and obviously we have issues with some of the locations in downtown core. But I kind of look at, like Drumbo Park, once it hits, the snow hits, nobody can get in that park at all. That's why I was a little, so nobody will use that from, like if we get snow, say in early December, it's, because there's no, it's not cleaned out to get there. So I'm okay with, so my thoughts were maybe to move them in a couple different spots. So, because I'm thinking, our parking lot on the main street, for example, in Drumbo would be a location that's year-round accessible. I realize the traffic that goes to the park in the summer is far bigger than the other, but I'm just thinking of usage over time. Princeton Hall parking lot, I think that's a good location because I think they can be used year-round. Plattsville Arena parking lot, I think the same. We don't have anything in Plattsville that's downtown core that we can put them, so it kind of takes that out of it. The Bright Park, I wasn't sure about whether we needed to put 3 there. I'd like to see us put, wherever we put them, I want them to be used, not just put them there because we want to put the same. If we put 6 in Plattsville and 2 everywhere else, I don't care. I just want them to be able to be used in time. And I think like if you put, when you mentioned about putting that on the map and people are traveling, say they're traveling in, January, and they come to Drumbo going, where's my charger? Well, they can't get at it because it's down in the park. So that was my concern of maybe having some of them in an area. Like for Drumbo, I'm thinking if we have some in the park and some uptown, then they're accessible.
So in the agreement, we need to keep the snow removed from them. Yeah. So we can get the snow removed in the Drumbo Park. It's just it'll be in the, but we are trying to amend it to come to the township office, the chargers. We'd like to use the parking lot downtown, but there is no hydro there at all. There's no hydro into that parking lot. So that's another thing, like none of the downtown cores really have. We don't have any hydro there, so that's one downfall to some of the stuff. But the park, we are trying to amend it to get it to this facility.
Because I think if they're at the park, like if I was the person running that business and if they were in Drumbo Park, you're not going to have a single person charge that. Even if we plow there, we're not, if it's down farther, you're not going to have a single usage for that unit for the whole winter. Yeah, even the Bright Park, does anybody even go in the Bright Park in the wintertime at all? So I know where you're coming from. I'm just trying to think as a place that we could utilize them.
We just picked municipal properties at the time.
Yeah.
And they asked for the highest traffic area that we own. And I would think, like, from a park point of view, we own the parking lot, we can have them parked there. And there are hydro hookups in every park. Like they've come and looked at all the panels and took pictures. So yeah, but we'd like to try to amend it to get it to over here, and that has to go through the MTO.
So if we decide to if council decides that, hey, we want to put them up in that park or up in our parking lot uptown, have we looked into the prospect of getting hydro there from?
No, staff have not done that.
Okay.
If you want to direct.
I say the biggest part for me for Drumbo Park, if they're way down by the food booth area, I think it's a waste of time putting them there for a yearly thing, not the summertime. I think they'll be used in the with all the ball tournaments and stuff that we have here. So, Councillor Pamber.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, do we make any money off of this enterprise, or
So they.
Jewel that gets everything?
So Jewel pay. We're still working on the agreement, but it's looking like Jewel will pay us $100 a parking spot per month.
Per month?
Yep, quarterly. And then they.
Better all the time.
Jewel, what's that? Jewel will, again, we're reviewing the whole contract, but Jewel is going to pay for the hydro usage, and Jewel will collect the money from the charging stations. All we have to do is keep the snow removed and check them. Like, just go make sure that there's nothing impeding so people can park there. And yeah, the parks were selected, but like I said, we tried to already we've already put the request in to transfer it to this building. With no hydro in the with no hydro in the parking lot. I don't know what kind of panel we'd have to, I don't know what expense that would be, but if council wants us to explore that.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with the Plattsville and the Princeton too. I'm not sure whether we need to put 3 in Bright at all in the park. How much is that?
I don't think again, we can go back to Joel, but those kind of were through the MTO grants, like 3 in each community.
Okay.
That's where that came from.
I'm just thinking usage. It's not what town it goes in. I'm just thinking of usage, period. Go ahead.
I think the Bright Park would be a bit different than the Drumble, because Drumble goes down. I could see what you're thinking,
Yeah.
you were going down, but Bright is pretty
Close.
condensed right on the road,
Yeah.
so I think it would be okay. And I think the municipal office makes sense for
Yeah. I'm just thinking of usage.
Yeah,
Simple,
no, I
simple as
agree.
that. It's not about, I'm just thinking of plain usage at all. I think if we did it in the Drumble Park, it might be, if we decide if they have to stay in the park, I think we would have to keep them right down, right out close to the road, so they're not way down. Just a thought. Go ahead,
So
Councilor.
we're not responsible for any of the maintenance costs.
No, that's still being reviewed, but the agreement right now as it stands, no, there won't be. And that's what we're reviewing right now with the lawyer to make sure we're.
Do these things ever happen to be vandalized?
If they get vandalized, they're supposed to fix them. I asked that question.
Yeah.
If our snow removal person breaks them like 3 times, we're going to probably be on the hook.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. All right, anything?
Sounds all right to me.
Yeah, I'm absolutely, I think it's good to have them. I just remember when this first come up, it was about trying to bring people to our downtown core, right? That was the whole gist of it, and the only ones that, kind of Bright and Drumble aren't really in that, but we don't have the properties to,
right, and
other
that's,
than put it.
yeah, that's why we went with the parks and.
Yeah. Go ahead,
It
Councilor.
almost seems too good to be
I
true.
know, that's what.
Yeah.
We're making money off of it.
I know, it's like, what's the
Yeah.
catch? I mean, to me, as long as we can mitigate risk, like
Yep.
our liability for if it blows
Yeah.
up, or somebody gets hurt, or somebody's vehicle gets,
Yeah.
and I assume that the agreement probably transfers
Yeah.
that risk to
Yeah.
the supplier, so.
Okay. All right, okay. Thank you very much, Trevor.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Be it hereby resolved that report CS 2509 be received as information, and further, that council directs staff to proceed with exploring the installation of electric vehicle charging stations in the following villages of the township of Blandford-Blenheim: Bright, Drumbo, Plattsville, and Princeton.
Okay, can I get a mover and a second, please? Moved by Councilor Banbury, second by Councilor Demarest. Any comments? All in favor? And opposed, if any? And that's carried. Okay, and now we will go back to our, yes, please. Yep.
Be it hereby resolved that council move into committee of adjustment at 4:16 PM.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councilor Barnes, second by Councilor Young. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Okay, I am officially opening this public meeting, which is being held under the Planning Act for the purpose of hearing minor variance applications and allowing any person in attendance the opportunity to make a presentation to council. I would like to ask those in attendance that if they wish to receive notification of the committee's decision, they should sign the sheet on the shelf by the door at the rear of the room. I would like to advise those in attendance that the Ontario Land Tribunal has the power to dismiss an appeal if an appellant has not provided the committee with oral submissions at a public meeting or written submission before a decision has been rendered by the committee. I would now ask committee members to state any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof, and I'm not seeing any. Next is the consideration of the minutes from the previous committee meeting, and does any member have any comments or revisions to the minutes presented? Nope. I request a verbal motion, please. Moved by Councilor Banbury, seconded by Councilor Demarest. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried.
There is one application to be heard today, MBA 02-25 by Greg Voisin Investment Corporation for the property located at 77 Workman Crescent in Plattsville. And Dustin, if you could present that report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, members of council and staff and those in attendance here today. The property in question is about 1,058 meters square, is currently vacant, and is the corner lot in what is known as Plattsville Estates subdivision, which is currently under development. The request before you today is to reduce the required exterior side yard width from 7.5 meters down to 5.7 meters. And the purpose of this request is to facilitate a new single detached dwelling that would contain a 3-car garage. In terms of the circulation to departments and agencies, no comments were received. In terms of public comments, I did receive some questions. However, I did not receive any written letters of support or objection for this application. In terms of the analysis, we would know that the intent of the required exterior side yard width is to ensure that there's adequate space between buildings and the public right-of-way to allow for maintenance and to ensure that the necessary sight lines are maintained as well at the corner. In this case, the Director of Public Works for the township indicated no concerns from a maintenance standpoint in terms of the right-of-way. It was also noted that there would be approximately a 5-meter boulevard between the exterior side yard lot line and the pavement of Quant Drive. The sidewalk would be on the west side of Quant Drive, so there would be no sidewalk on that side. In terms of sight lines, the corner lots are required to maintain a sight triangle measuring 7.5 meters by 7.5 meters. In this case, that is still being maintained, and that triangle requires nothing taller than 2 feet to be permitted inside of it. That includes parking of vehicles. And in this case, the proposed 3-car garage is going to be located on the east side of the property, so it's going to be far away from the corner, the intersection. So in staff's opinion, we are of the belief that the requested reduction to the exterior side yard width is in keeping with the intent and purpose of both the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and we are here tonight in support of the request, and we do recommend approval to the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Does the applicant have any comments or anything to say concerning the application, the recommendation, or the conditions outlined in the report? No. Okay. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments they wish to make? Go ahead, Councillor Demers.
This might go without saying, but do you know if the home that's intended to be built on that site will be of similar height to the ones behind it in the existing subdivision?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demers, I don't know of the height. They would have to respect the maximum height, which is 11 meters, but perhaps one of the applicants would be able to advise what the proposed height would be.
It sounds like similar to what the other houses.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is similar to this.
Okay. Okay. Anything else from council? Nope. Is there any person from the audience who wishes to provide comments in support or opposition of this application? Okay. Is there a verbal motion from the committee to accept the application with the conditions noted or to deny the application? Give me a... Okay. Moved by Banbury, seconded by Councillor Demers. All in favor? And opposed, if any, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, the business before the committee has now been completed, and there is a written resolution to rise, please.
Be it hereby resolved that the committee rise at 4:22 p.m. and that the regular meeting of council resumes.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Demers, second by Councillor Barnes. All in favor? And opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are down to Jim Borton. I'm presuming you're presenting that, Josh? Thank you. All right.
Through Mr. Mayor, yep, the Director of Public Works is out of the office today. He's representing the township at the Public Works Trade Show in conjunction with AORS. So as far as the monthly report goes, on the side of capital, we've got an update on the Princeton Pond project. Ponds are completed and Ducks Unlimited's been there to start the plantings. We had heard of some concerns regarding that, creating a better barrier, sort of an edge to the pond, so we're pleased to see that some of those trees have been put up to start to establish that natural edge. In addition, they're working on completing that walking path that will go around the pond. As far as the Princeton Phase 4 of that project goes, construction has gone slightly slower than expected. This has largely been the result of water lines and hydro lines that have been needed to be relocated. So staff are working in conjunction with the engineer to communicate those concerns and work through those problems. On Main Street right now, we have received some concerns regarding access. The construction company has worked their best to sort of maintain that access, especially in the context of emergency services insofar that it's possible. And Cassidy Construction have been in consistent communication with our emergency services department to ensure that our vehicles are able to respond to any issues as they arise. Bridge 24 archaeological dig is underway. And again, pushed back slightly as a result of some of the rainy weather that we'd received in May, but we understand it's well underway at this point. Just moving down the list here. The AORS, the trade show is taking place as we speak right now. So that's on today and tomorrow again. And then on the side of drainage, nothing major to report. We have received some concerns. The drainage superintendent is responding to those as they arise, especially during the rainy month of May. And finally, I guess the last thing I'll speak to is the approval of road permits for ExploreNet. They continue to do their work in the township. We've had limited issues, especially comparative to some of the other Oxford municipalities, so we're grateful for that, and that work is well underway. We're excited to see fiber optic cable extended to the vast majority of the township. With that, happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Okay, any questions from council? I just have one. When you mentioned that, I had concerns up around the Ratho area about instead of them putting the cable under the ground, that they're putting some poles up there.
Yep.
And it's a concern from some of the farmers. I guess the poles are maybe a little bit close to the road. So I don't know if you've had that same call here, but he's concerned about that, and he wondered even about our snow removal, if it was going to cause issues. Right.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Happy to communicate that to Jim. My understanding is that there are some sections of the township where the road is just not conducive to putting it in the ground, whether there's, it's too wet or there's sort of obstacles that need to work around. In that case, we are obligated to sort of allow them the opportunity to use the existing hydro pole infrastructure.
Okay.
So if it's above ground and not on the hydro pole infrastructure, I think something that we'd be able to unpack further and get some comments, but I'll make sure that we pass that on to the
From what I
director.
understand, it was new poles they were putting in.
Okay.
And I think it's, I'll talk to you after about it.
Sure,
Anyway.
yep.
I just happened to think of it when you mentioned that.
Yep.
I meant to bring it up today. I didn't write it down, so. Okay, anything else from council? It'd be nice to see everybody get, I've heard a lot of people now that are starting to gradually have to go back to their place of employment instead of working for home, so it may alleviate that a little bit, but during COVID time, it was absolutely horrible for kids, for school and everything, so this will be great to have this for everybody and get it across, and then once they kind of get done, then we can maybe start thinking about that SWIFT money that we put away years ago and maybe fill in some of the small gaps that aren't covered in it. So, yeah, and we have county money as well. There as well.
Mr. Mayor, did Jim not indicate that they were planning on having it all completed this year?
I think they're
Do you think
supposed
that's
to, I
even
think.
physically possible?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as far as I understand, the funding terms have assigned some timelines to the project completion. Not to say that they couldn't be extended, but I would agree that that was what I heard the end date was. That said, massive undertaking, and
I know.
I would be not, I'm just speculating, but I would imagine that an extension on that funding term is probably a likely outcome.
They've pretty much been on every road in the town, like rural road.
Yeah.
They went all winter. They were out there all winter long. So, yeah. And this wasn't the greatest winters for that, so. Okay, move to second, please. Oh, sorry, you gotta read it first.
Be it hereby resolved that report PW 2507 be received as information.
Now can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Young, second by Councillor Demers. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Okay, and reports from council members. Anything? Councillor Bambry?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I attended the trade show this morning. I expect maybe to go back for a couple hours tomorrow afternoon. Anyway, Jim did us proud. He handled himself very well on stage, introducing the guests. Were you there?
Yes, Daryl.
Oh, you saw it. Were you there, Nancy?
No.
Okay. I didn't see you, Daryl. Sorry. Anyway, Jim did a great job, and we should be very proud of him, and the whole organization put together a really, really good show. I would urge you to go and visit it if you possibly can.
Yeah.
An awful lot of stuff there to see. It's unbelievable, all the machinery that's available for doing road work, parks and all that kind of stuff. I inquired at the one booth. It's an outfit that handles John Deere equipment exclusively, but it's mainly to do with road maintenance and all that kind of stuff. So I said, how are the tariffs going to affect, because most of that stuff is actually brought in from the States. And so she kind of made it clear that, I don't know whether it was their company or John Deere, I think itself, the Canadian division, they signed up. Apparently, if you order the product before the tariffs come in, then you don't have to pay tariffs on the stuff. So John Deere ordered an ungodly amount of product from the States prior to the tariffs being implemented. So according to her, they've got inventory to last for a good long time.
Right.
So that, if you're buying something, a John Deere road grader or something, it won't be tariffed, according to her anyway.
That's good to know.
So long as it was purchased or,
Yep.
brought in before that, ordered.
Anything else from council? On that line too, the CEO and I went, and I don't know if we represented our township well at the golf tournament yesterday, but we went to that. It was a good, beautiful day. It was absolutely a beautiful day, well attended too. I don't know how many was there, but I don't know if they had two groups on every hole, but they must have had pretty close. So there was 8 on every hole, like going. It was a really good day, well represented. We were sitting at a table with people from almost the Quebec border, Eastern Ontario, so they were from all over Ontario that were there. It was really, really good as well. Like I say, very well attended. I know the CEO and I have a quick meeting at, I think, 10 tomorrow, and then we're going right up to the show tomorrow as well. And I think Ray mentioned that he was going as well, so we plan on going there tomorrow and what's going on. June 14th, it's been mentioned here a little bit already, is Plattsville Days, I think it's called. It's a busy day, and also Drumbo Fire Department is having their ball tournament here. I think, Trevor, does Bright have a breakfast coming up in the next? Oh, it's the 21st. Okay, I knew I saw online that the firefighters were having a breakfast coming up. We'll have another meeting before then, but so anyway, I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the next few weeks in our township, so I highly recommend everybody get out and enjoy stuff that's outdoors. So that's all I have. Anybody else? Nope. Unfinished business, motions, notice of motions. We don't have our closed. Bylaws, please.
Be it hereby resolved that the following bylaw be now read a first and second time. A 2499-2025 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Demmer, seconded by Councillor Young. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. And third reading.
Be it hereby resolved that the following bylaw be now read a third and final time. A 2499-2025 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council.
Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Demmer, second by Councillor Barnes. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Anything under other? Nope. And adjournment to our next meeting.
Whereas business before council has been completed at 4:32 PM, be it hereby resolved that council adjourn to meet again on Wednesday, June 18th, 2025 at 4 PM.
Okay, can I get mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Young, second by Councillor Barnes. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you, council.